The transfer portal giveth, and the transfer portal taketh. But sometimes they can both happen in the same offseason. And that's exactly what happens to the Indiana Hoosiers this offseason. Can their transfer portal additions improve them enough to get the Hoosiers more victories on the football field this season?
From LA to Piscataway, all Big Ten all year long. This is Big Ten 10.
The last two seasons for Indiana have really gone downhill to where they were the previous two seasons. Before that, 2019 and 2020, they were a combined 14-7. Things look to be going up in the right direction for Tom Allen and the Indiana Hoosiers, but the last two seasons in 2021 and 2022, it's come crashing down in Bloomington. A combined 6-18 record. They've lost 16 of their last 18 Big Ten games. So you can understand why a transfer portal makeover was really in store for this Indiana football team, because Tom Allen needs to get it done. He needs to show progress this season. He needed to dive in to the immediate improvement that is the transfer portal in order to maybe still be the head coach when the Big Ten adds USC and UCLA and goes divisionless in 2024. That's why Indiana did what they did in the transfer portal. They need to see that immediate improvement and try to see things going in the upward direction, because if it continues to go down, Tom Allen may not be the head coach here next season. Now, the transfer portal, big-time transfer portal movement, not exactly the greatest way to build a football program. I've said this on this channel before. I'm going to say it again. But here's the thing about the transfer portal additions that Indiana is bringing in this season. These guys are no scrubs. These are pretty good football players. These were highly recruited football players. A lot of times, some of these players played really good snaps and put up some good production on a college football field as well at the Power 5 level. This is a really good group of transfers for Indiana. Highly ranked in the Big Ten, highly ranked across the country. Now, when you bring in a lot of transfers, they bring in 13 transfers in this class. A lot of times it's because you're replacing guys that left. Now, it's not a great sign that Indiana lost the amount of guys that they did. You look at that, fourth most transfer departures in the Big Ten. Two of those up there were Wisconsin and Nebraska, which went through coaching changes. It's naturally going to happen in the transfer portal. So it was really Indiana and Maryland in the top four that really got these big amount of transfer departures. And I think a big reason for that at Indiana is a lot of these kids don't see the program really going in an upward trajectory. And Tom Allen is kind of replacing a lot of these kids with new incoming transfers as well. So bringing in kids with talent, that's great. We're going to get to them throughout this preview. But the departures, that's also a concern, because a couple of years ago, Tom Allen put together a pretty good recruiting class. Now you're seeing some of those guys depart the program, which kind of hurts the culture that they're trying to build over there at Indiana. So will the transfer portal work? That's kind of the whole basis of this preview, because there's a lot of transfers on offense. There's a lot of transfers on defense to try to make this team take a big-time jump up this season in 2023. Let's start first with the offensive side of the football. Look, there's transfers coming in on this team, which this could be a team that could surprise some people on the offensive side of the ball. This could be an Indiana team that could be a lot better than Indiana teams have been since that great 2020 season that they had. You know, Connor Bazelak really just didn't work out. Really didn't work out. He was a transfer quarterback that kind of came in, and he transferred out to Bowling Green. Dexter Williams was a very temporary solution towards the end of the season for the Indiana Hoosiers. So they needed a quarterback. They needed a quarterback. We'll get to that in just a minute. But more losses that this offense really suffered. You look at Emery Simmons, he was their second leading receiver, transferred to Utah, 408 yards and a touchdown last season. A.J. Barner, who I think is going to do some really good things at Michigan as the number 2 tight end in that offense, 199 yards, 3 touchdown catches last year for the Hoosiers. DJ Matthews, 224 yards and a couple of scores. They lost their leading rusher, Shifty Shawnee Shivers, 562 yards and 6 touchdowns. So you're losing a decent amount of production, but let's get back to the quarterback here for just a second. You're bringing in a familiar Indiana name, Tayven Jackson. Okay, coming back to the state of Indiana. He originally went to Tennessee out of high school and realized there was a lot of talent in this crowded volunteer quarterback room. Let me just go back home and get in the starting lineup and see what I can do back in Indiana. And that's exactly what he's trying to do. Now, what he's trying to recreate is that magic that Indiana had at the quarterback position in 2020 with Michael Penix. Michael Penix and Tayven Jackson have similar qualities as a quarterback, right? They've got a good arm, but they've got the ability to move around, use their agility to create plays with their feet. I really look at Tayven Jackson, highly rated, 4-star recruit, very difficult to bring down. He's pretty lanky, and when he's scrambling outside of the pocket, it's not easy to get a hand on him and more or less bring him down for a loss or a sack in the backfield. Tayven Jackson, especially in the area of the RPO, could be a really big addition to Indiana. This is a quarterback that, if everything goes well, could really surprise some people, I believe, in Big Ten circles. Now, I think a reason why he's going to be pretty good is they've surrounded him with pretty good weapons. I'm going to start with 2 wide receiver transfer additions that are going to bolster this receiving core and make it maybe dangerous for the Hoosiers this season. Let's start first with DeQuese Carter. Great FCS talent, looking to upgrade a little bit, coming out of Fordham. Combined for over 2,000 yards, 24 touchdowns receiving the last 2 years at Fordham. He was 5th in the FCS in receiving touchdowns last season, 6th in receiving yards. This is a guy who can go up and get the football, a little bit of a bigger body. I really like what he provides to the table. He's kind of one of those FCS kids looking to transfer in his final year, looking to upgrade to really improve his stock going forward towards a professional career. But I really see he could make some big plays in this Indiana offense, especially with Tayven Jackson at quarterback. How about E.J. Williams? He burst onto the scene right away for Clemson in that 2020 season. 24 catches, 306 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Injuries and other things have kind of held him back from his initial breakout season with the Tigers over there. But he was a 4-star, top 100 type of talent coming out of high school. So this guy can ball. This guy can play. He can make plays, and he's just another guy. I'm going to go over a few of them here. He's just another guy in this group that's going to be able to make some plays. With a guy now like Tayven Jackson at quarterback, things could start stacking up here for Indiana. When you talk about a guy that's returning, Cam Camper, he could be one of the best wide receivers in the Big Ten when all is said and done. 569 yards, 2 touchdowns in 7 games last season. Now, he is coming off of an ACL injury, so that's obviously something to watch out for. So when you come off that big of an injury, you know, sometimes you kind of need to ease your way into things depending on how your recovery goes. But Cam Camper, it sounds like, should be good to go here this season. And by the way he was playing last season, if he continues at that clip, I think everything's going to be just fine in this offense. We ain't done, folks. Donovan McCulley, the former quarterback, he was once thought to be the future at the quarterback position here for the Indiana Hoosiers. He's made a solid transition over to wide receiver. 16 catches, 169 yards, and a score last season. I think he's going to provide depth to IU. I think maybe earlier on in the offseason, some people maybe slated him to maybe be in a starting role. I don't know if that's going to happen because they're bringing in a lot of better wide receiver talent. But if you have a guy like Donovan McCulley at like a number 4 slot, I think you're doing pretty good depth-wise at wide receiver for the Indiana Hoosiers. Let's transition now to the run game. There's 3 guys that I believe are going to really contribute here. And a good amount of them, a couple of them, I think are going to be very versatile in this offense in the ways that they are going to be used. Let's start with Josh Henderson, right? The leading returning rusher, 398 yards, 4 touchdowns last season. Also had 274 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. So he can do many different things in this offense. That's kind of a theme with a couple of these guys in the backfield. Man, I am excited to see Jalen Lucas play football in this offense with a better quarterback, potentially, and other weapons around him. 271 yards, 2 touchdowns rushing. It would not surprise me to get him more involved in the pass game. He's kind of that hybrid type. Man, he is smaller in stature, but he packs a punch. What he lacks in size, he makes up for in explosiveness. Not only on offense, okay, I've mentioned the rushing. He had 16 catches last season, 2 kick returns for a touchdown last season. He's going to be a big-time Big Ten difference maker on special teams. Jalen Lucas is. They bring in a transfer running back in Christian Turner. He provides depth in the running back room as well. Over 1,000 yards, 12 touchdowns over the course of the last 2 seasons at Wake Forest. He started his career at Michigan before ending up with the Demon Deacons out there in Winston-Salem. So this is a deep running back room. I like the talent. I think you got a couple of guys in Jalen Lucas and Josh Henderson that can do a lot of different things in this offense. That can be confusing. I think that's really good, especially with the dual threat capabilities that Tayven Jackson had. You're going to have a lot of guys moving across this formation, and it's going to be confusing, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I see a ton of RPO, zone read type of potential in this offense. I'm really excited about it. A guy to keep an eye on, Omar Cooper, with a 4-star out of Indianapolis. Just keep an eye on him. I think he's going to provide some depth to this wide receiver room as well. You got 3 seniors on the Indiana offensive line. You look at Matthew Bedford at tackle, a 2021 honorable mention All Big Ten. He missed 11 games due to injury last season. That was 2021 that he got honorable mention. And Zach Carpenter started 10 games last season at center. Mike Kadick started 19 games over the past 2 seasons at IU. So it's an all right offensive line. But maybe they're going to look to get rid of the ball a little bit quicker, considering the speed guys that they have on the perimeter. I am so excited to see what Indiana can do on the offensive side of the football. I think the offense is going to be the strengths of this team. I think they've done a good job utilizing the transfer portal in key spots, in important spots, especially quarterback, on this offense to improve the football team. Now, I'm going to say it on defense, and I'm going to mention it here on offense. How do all these transfer pieces gel together? Who's going to make the big difference? Like, you got a lot of guys. I mentioned Cam Camper, DeQuese Carter, E.J. Williams, Donovan McCulley, Jalen Lucas, Josh Henderson. I mentioned all these guys. There's only one football to go around. How is that all going to work? It's up to the coordinators, it's up to the coaching staff to put these guys in the right spot. So I want to move on now to the defensive side of the football. And when you talk about Indiana defense, and when you talk about needing a makeover, yeah, it's this defense that really needed a transfer portal makeover. They were last in the Big Ten in scoring defense and in total defense, and it wasn't by a close margin, okay? They gave up 33.9 points per game last season. Rutgers was 13th in the Big Ten, giving up 29.3. That's a pretty decent disparity between last and second to last there in the Big Ten. They were last in the Big Ten in total defense, gave up 449 yards on average. Michigan State was 13th with 416 yards per game. So it's not like 14, 13, 12, and maybe 11 are all in the same general area. Indiana was last in the Big Ten in these big categories by a big margin. And they crumpled it up, threw it in the trash, and there is a brand new shiny toy here in Indiana. There's a lot to play with here on this defense. A lot of new faces in new places here on this Indiana defense. Now, not only were they towards the bottom of the Big Ten, they were at the bottom of the Big Ten in the cellar, in the Big Ten defensive basement, so to speak, but they also lose a lot of decent players from that defense as well, which makes this even more of a challenge to get them out of the cellar in the Big Ten. They possibly lost their best defensive player in Deshaun McCullough right from Bloomington, right? Having that hometown kid, that was a big recruiting win for Tom Allen. To lose him after 1 year, it's kind of demoralizing, to be honest with you. He ends up transferring to Oklahoma. He had 49 tackles, 6 TFLs, and 4 sacks, led the team in sacks last season. That's tough. That's tough after 1 year. That hurts, but that's the reality that we live in college football. You look at Alfred Bryant, 7.5 tackles for loss at outside linebackers. His career comes to an end. Second on the team in TFLs. Bryant Fitzgerald in the secondary, experienced guy, Played a lot of games, started a lot of games, 74 tackles last season. Devin Matthews as well had 65 tacklers. So you have a lot of these top tacklers and these players that are no longer on this defense, a defense that was at the bottom of the Big Ten. Yeah, you're going to need a lot of transfers to try to not only replace those guys, but try to make this defense a little bit better. Now, there's a couple of guys returning that this team and this defense is really going to hope to build around with the transfers that they brought in. First guy you're going to take a look at is Aaron Casey at outside linebacker, the best returning player on this defense. Honorable mention, all Big Ten last season, 85 tackles, 10.5 tackles for loss, led the Hoosiers in both of those categories. He was 6th in the Big Ten in TFL. Would not surprise me to see him be an all Big Ten player. Once again, this is a guy that can get after it. He can create disruptions in the backfield. Those are the kind of guys that you need when you don't have a lot of guys on your team. You at least need guys that can get off the edge and that can create pressure in the backfield, that can create negative plays. That's big when you're dealing with a defense that wants to improve, right? So you also look at Noah Pierre, returns as the Husky. That's kind of a hybrid safety and linebacker type of spot. You talk about a stat sheet stuffer in basketball, like your points, your rebounds, assists, blocks, all that kind of stuff. Noah Pierre was a stat sheet stuffer here in football. 39 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 3 passes defended, and 3 forced fumbles. He did it all on the defensive side of the football there, kind of in that hybrid Husky spot for Indiana. So those are a couple of players that the Hoosiers are going to look to build off of on defense, but there's a lot of new guys on this defense. Maybe more than half of basically the 3 deep for the Hoosiers is transfers, brand new, and that can have mixed results sometimes. Let's start with Andre Carter. This is probably their biggest transfer addition, definitely on defense, maybe overall when all is said and done. From Western Michigan, had a big year last year in the MAC. 70 tackles, 13.5 tackles for loss, and 7 sacks, 16, or I should say second team all MAC last season. Having Aaron Casey off of one side and having Andre Carter off the other side is going to be a challenge for some pass protection type of schemes for some offensive lines across the Big Ten. Okay, it's great to have a second pass rusher. It's great where a pass protection can't just shift their coverage, shift their protection over to one side. It's great to have guys, I think, coming off of both sides. I think Indiana could take advantage of that this season. How about on the defensive line? They've built a good amount of depth on the defensive line through the transfer portal. Philip Bliddy over from Texas Tech had 4.5 TFLs, 2 sacks last season. He was regularly in the rotation for Texas Tech in his first 3 years with the Red Raiders. I think he's going to be a good addition as well. Like I said, there is a ton of transfers on this defense. Like Jameer Johnson, a 4-star corner coming out of Texas. Marcus Burris, a 4-star defensive lineman. These are high school ratings coming out of Texas A&M. Anthony Jones from Oregon. Linnell Carr from West Virginia. Folks, Indiana has brought in a lot of Power 5 players, a lot of Power 5 transfers onto this defense. I just don't know how it's all going to gel together. You have guys that these programs have identified as talented, right? Your Texases, your Texas A&Ms, right? That these are talented kids. They were highly rated kids. And now you come in and everybody's just getting thrown in together. I think it's a little bit concerning for me where this team is on the defensive side of the football. When I look at them last season, when they had Deshaun McCullough, when they had some of these other guys like a Devin Matthews and an Alfred Bryant and a Brian Fitzgerald, now you bring in brand new guys that are completely new to the system, and you got to try to put all these guys in the right places. I think there's some talent here for Indiana. I just don't know how it's all going to gel together. I get a little bit concerned when you're diving this deep into the transfer portal, when your projected depth chart is maybe 5, maybe 6 brand new guys coming out of the portal. I think it maybe speaks to where Indiana football is right now and maybe the desperation that is in this program right now. I think there's some pieces on defense that you can be positive about. I think it's going to be the pass rush. I think the pass rush with Andre Carter and Aaron Casey could be good. I think those are guys that can end up in the backfield most plays. But beyond that, it's very iffy right now. It's very difficult to predict at this time how Indiana is going to be, if they're going to improve at all on the defensive side of the football. So we've taken a look at offense. We've taken a look at defense. The goal is, I think, for Tom Allen to remain at Indiana. Remember, they went 4-8 somehow last season. For him to remain, you want to see progress. Yeah, you've gone deep into the transfer portal, and I think to improve on recruiting, they were dead last in the Big Ten last season, 14th out of 14 in the Big Ten. To improve on recruiting, you got to get W's on the field. You got to try to use this transfer class to get some wins on the football field. Let's take a peek at that schedule for the Indiana Hoosiers. Of course, starting off against Ohio State. Hey, it's at home, right? Well, it's not going to be easy. I think there's a very unpredictable game on this schedule. When you look at that game in Indianapolis, neutral site at Lucas Oil Stadium, September 16th against Louisville. Boy, Louisville, outside of Colorado, Indiana and Louisville are kind of two of those teams that really dove into the transfer portal, and the Louisville head coach, very familiar with Indiana, former Purdue head coach Jeff Brom over there. So that's kind of a big swing game for me. Because if they're able to beat Louisville, I could very well see, wins over Indiana State, win over Louisville, win over Akron. This is a 3-1 team going up against likely an undefeated Maryland team, and at that point, that game could have some juice over in College Park on September 30th. I think there's two key home games for Indiana. You look at Rutgers on October 21st. You look at Michigan State on November 18th. I think those are key games to get them to 6 wins, because I believe they can win both of those football games. Because you look around at the rest of the schedule, I think it's going to be tough for Indiana. Look, there is a path to 6 wins. There is a path to bowl eligibility, considering what I just laid out on offense and what I just laid out on defense. That path has some tree roots. That path, has some, maybe it does have some trash on it. It has some big boulders. It's got some curves in the road, right? That hike to get to 6 wins, it's going to be a little bit rocky, right? There's a big elevation gain, I think, to get to 6 wins, right? Might be some ups and downs in this schedule if this team wants to get to that level for me. But the one thing that kind of sticks out to me a little bit, how are they going to fare against tough physical teams? We know what this team could do on offense. We know this team could maybe put up some yards, put up some points on offense as everything comes together. But what about the defense? Okay, I think if they go up against a team that maybe likes to throw it a little bit more, like a Wisconsin on the schedule, maybe like a Maryland, even though they're pretty balanced now on the schedule, maybe a Purdue, maybe somebody like that that maybe likes to throw it a little bit more. I think they're going to be better against teams like that because Aaron Casey and Andre Carter, they can pin their ears back and get to the quarterback. But you face those tough physical teams like a Rutgers, like an Illinois, right? Brett Bielema and Greg Schiano, we know what those two guys are all about. Toughness, physicality, beat them at the line of scrimmage. It's all about the trenches. I'm not sold on the trenches for Indiana, right? There's a great possibility that those games, and then especially Michigan, you could even throw in Penn State into that as well, that those teams just control the line of scrimmage and just run it right at Indiana's front that doesn't have a lot of pushback, and these offensive lines just road great all day long and all day long and all day long, and they will dare Indiana to stop them, keeping that Indiana offense on the sideline. I think it's going to be tough for Indiana to really combat. And I think that's a big alternative when you play the Indiana Hoosiers. Be tough, be physical, keep their strength on the sideline, which is the offensive side of the football. Could they get to 6 wins? Yeah, they could. I just think it's going to be tough to get there for Indiana. I think the big question when you observe this team is, has this program made improvements? Because that's the one big thing. Tom Allen, I don't think there's a ton of coaches on the hot seat in the Big Ten. There's some, but I don't think there's a ton of coaches on the hot seat. I think Tom Allen, though, is one of them. They've taken a downward trajectory as of late the last couple of years in Bloomington and Indiana, and you got to think the administration wants to see some victories. They want to see some progress to see if Tom Allen can still be the guy going forward in Bloomington, Indiana.
Thanks for watching Big Ten Ted, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.